stories about, and all my heritage, and I don't, I want to know that. I want to have some kind of documentation.
Well,
something.
Let's start back in the cotton fields.
You tell the one about grandmother in the cars. I think that's neat.
Oh, our grandmother. Yeah, she had a Hudson car. The first one she had.
Willis, not a Willis.
Packard.
That was a Hudson, wasn't it?
Good gosh.
Oh, well, it was a car with four wheels.
It was a great big old box-looking car.
It was a heavy-looking car. That was that's what people used to think he was rich and everything. No. I call it Overland.
Maybe that's what it was.
It was Overland, but they called it something else. I don't remember what it.
Uncle Joe would drive
It had a trunk, just like a suitcase on the back. And
it looked like one of those cars that the people in England, the rich people, ride around in. Because here's the chauffeur sitting here.
Grandmother'd always get in the back.
And she would sit up there just as regal as all get out. It's like
she got
Queen Bee.
Got her son a chauffeur's cap.
I don't know what
I've seen pictures of him in a chauffeur's cap.
What?
Yeah.
Well, Uncle George would wear anything she gave her as long as she gave him.
She rode around it like she was Queen Bee, and she was. Our grandmother was a character.
Tell them about you.
Okay, I don't know how much of this is fact or just imagination, but I was terrified of her because for some reason I had to spend the night with her when I was about 7, 8 years old, and I had never spent the night with her before. And she had long hair, but she'd always had it braided. Well, at night she let it down, and she was tall and skinny and all this gray hair, and I thought, ooh, she's a witch. Mm-hmm. Then we were sitting in the kitchen. Her house just had 2 rooms. There was a bedroom, living room, and then a kitchen. And she said, Lilka, which is what she called me, have you ever seen a broom walk? And I said, no. And she told that broom to walk out of the corner. And I can still in my mind see that broom going, the corner of it would go forward and the other corner would go forward. Well, by then I was just scared to death. And then she told the broom to go back, and it did.
There we go.
I'll tell you about her grandmother. She was a hypochondriac when she wanted to be. She could get sick so fast.
Let's see. She had a little schluck of rum, or what was
Black wine.
Black wine. She'd take every night.
It was called brewer's wine.
Every night she'd take a schluck of
But
that.
she told us that was medicine. That wasn't anything else.
Medicinal purposes only.
And it looked so good in the bottle, and I couldn't wait to taste it. And bitter, oh gosh, it was bitter.
But she had this great big old, we call it a pezina in Czech. Feather bed, okay. And when anybody came to see her, there was a couch over there on that side of the room, and she would get in that bed, sit on that bed. And there were some people there that I think they wanted to borrow money, or they did borrow money, the Slovaceks. You remember, Jerry?
Yeah.
And we were all sitting there one time visiting, and somebody said, oh, there's Emil. Boy, she ducked under that big old feather bed. And, when he came in there, she was the sickest one person you ever saw. And the minute he pulled out of the yard, she got up and sat down. We went on with our conversation.
And
she must have had something against him.
She was very, very psychic. She knew things before they happened. And she had one grandson that carried the Matisha name. That was her son's son, and F.J. Matisha. And one night, she walked, how far was it from her house to our house?
Well, let's see. It's 1,
about a mile
2, 3. No, it's 1, 2, 3, 3.5 miles.
And now she was an elder person then. I know she was in her 60s anyway. And she kept telling us that it was the middle of the night, and she woke us up, and she kept saying, go get FJ off that bridge. Well, Mother and Daddy, she had been kind of
FJ was our cousin.
Light in the brains anyway lately, so they just thought she was having one of her episodes, and Mother got her quieted down and put her to bed. And about 2 weeks later, his parents got word that he'd been killed in action. And it was that day that she saw him, of course,
on that bridge.
And later on, his commanding officer came to visit his parents. It was quite the custom back then after World War II. And his parents asked, how did he die? And they said he was driving his tank across a bridge and it blew up.
Was he not among the first soldiers to die in
Yes.
World War II?
Yes.
What I thought.
And that was in Italy or Africa or
German war, wasn't
In England.
No, it wasn't in England.
It wasn't?
It was in Germany.
it? Germany.
it was in Germany.
Yes.
Mhm.
As far as I know, it was in
What
Germany.
he was chauffeuring these big colonels and everything
Well, he was
around.
driving a tank, though. He was a tank
Yeah, I
driver.
thought he got shot when he was in a jeep,
Well, maybe it was a Jeep.
chauffeuring them
I thought it was
officers
a
around.
tank. What did you
Oh,
think?
I thought it was a tank too.
Well, maybe it was. I
These
thought
old
it
people, you have to forgive their memories.
Ain't no old people here.
Speaking of intuition, our father, our daddy,
Yes.
one Sunday we got up and he said, "We're all going to Beaumartin today." And Mother said, "Why?" She said, "We just got to go to Beaumartin." She says, "I want to visit the cemetery over there." He had a cousin or somebody buried there, I don't remember. And we went to that cemetery and he got out of the car by himself. He said, "Now y'all all stay in the car. I have got something to do here." And so he walked off and he was gone about 10 or 15 minutes. And then he came back pale as a ghost and told us that he heard his mother say, "Ya sem tu." That means I am here. And he swore up and down he heard her just as plain as day. And it was about a week later, we got a black bordered letter from Czechoslovakia saying that she died that day. And now that has always puzzled me, but talk about intuition or whatever you want to call it.
Our mother had a lot of that intuition, too. She would always have dreams, and if there were black horses, it was something good was going to happen. And if it was white horses, it was bad, which would be just the opposite of what I would have thought. But we lived in Utah, and poor as church mice. We had one son, Royce Jr. And I don't know how she knew it, but when things got so bad financially, here would come a letter, and out would drop a $20 bill, which back then was a fortune.
Hi, kid.
Hi, Jace. And that would buy groceries for us for 2 weeks back then.
Wow.
But it was
How you
always
doing there, David?
just when we needed the most. Goodness gracious, if he grows any taller.
Come over by yourself.
Oh, he's a big boy now. He drives all by himself. I bet and doesn't get lost.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
He's taking pictures here.
Yeah.
And listen
We're
to
giving his
getting
life.
my history. Getting my history.
Good to
Y'all
see you
know
again.
each other?
Now, before he starts doing this, I want to ask y'all some questions.
Okay.
Mother, y'all said that Mother and Dad, when they lived in South Dakota, that Mother and Dad, I know that they used to round up horses,
Mm-hmm.
them wild horses over there.
Because they live close to an Indian reservation.
Yeah. And that land was so rich on that river bottom where they lived, was that you could take a hatchet and just drive it into the ground and get your watermelon seed, step on it, and it would make watermelons. With no watering or nothing, they said it would grow. But y'all said that she was breaking them horses.
Mother told me the story that she had 2 babies. And I would assume that would be, I don't know. Because the little girls they lost 3 children up there. One little boy at 18 months and 2 little girls at birth. So I don't know who the children were, but she told me she'd tie the children Indian fashion to the outside of the corral and she would go in and break the horses. And then when Dad came, he had to go off to town to work during the week because times were really bad. And when he'd come in whenever he came in, he could take horses ready to ride back, and then they'd go catch some more. And no one else in the family heard this story but me.
Well,
And our
that's
mother
right.
had an imagination she could have been a fiction writer.
I know that she loved horses. She had a bridle with the little pearls or rubies or something on the side of it. And that was her horse bridle.
Going back,
And going back over there, that's when we were just kids.
that's what I was going to go back to.
And she would harness 4 mules and go cultivate with a 2-row cultivator.
2 of those,
And one day she was cultivating right there close to the house, some grazer, and neighbor across the road, he was cultivating with mules too. But he said that it was a real windy day, and he's just wanting to quit so bad. But he seen her there working with those mules. He said he wasn't about to let that lady quit before he did.
And he said she,
And he worked till dark.
he said she plowed till dark.
Well, was that not when the one of those horses that were called Jack and Mike,
Yeah,
and one of them bolted and laid down and wouldn't get up,
I don't know about that.
and then he went over there and got him. And she went over to get George Rivers, and he said, "No, I'm not going to fool with those mules." And she had to wait till the little mule decided to get up on his own.
But our mother, who was married him, who had rather work in the fields than housework. She hated housework.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she would do the bare essentials, and she was a terrific cook, but she just did not like
Of
housework.
course,
I
we
guess
had
that's where I take it.
we always had a lot of hogs, cattle, and cows to milk,
Chickens.
We had
chickens,
to come home
feedlot cattle.
We had to come home from school, change clothes, go to the field, help pick cotton, or head maize, or shock corn, cane,
Feed.
whatever we did. But we always had to go work in the fields. And then we came home, and then we had to help slop the hogs, get the eggs, milk the cows. But we always had what?
That was a chore. And before you went to school every morning,
every
too.
morning we had
Yeah,
to
it's before we went
milk
to school.
2 cows. We each had 2 cows to milk.
And we had
So-
one cow named White Eagle that had teats about that long. And guess who got to milk her? Because I was the youngest and had little hands. And I hated that cow.
We didn't sell milk, but we sold cream. We sent
and
that cream.
we shipped the cream.
We shipped the cream to Swift and Armored in Fort Worth and to Denver, Colorado, and never did get a bad treatment.
We had a train that
There's
went to
5 and
Exeter
10
Bend.
gallon cans.
Well, when I was growing up, we had to take it to Stanford to the depot to be. We'd collect it in the milk can, stainless steel milk can, all week, without refrigeration. It would be kept in the cellar, but that was as cool as it got, and it never soured. I don't know why.
Mm.
And we had a cream separator in the little house, which was the wash house. We'd put the whole milk in the big bowl in the top, and to this day, I don't know how that separator worked. Milk would come out one spout, and cream would come out the other spout.
all
And
in
you had to
cylinder.
turn a handle. And it had 32 cylinders, and I had to wash those.
Yeah.
And when you
Wow.
separated, you had to make sure that you turn it at 60 rounds per minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
That's why. I
No,
couldn't
it was more than that. Wasn't it 60 rounds?
You had to have-
Anyway, it was 60 rounds. So,
That would be 1 a second. That makes sense.
no, that was too slow.
There were usually 2 of them in there doing it, so when one got tired, the other one took over. Mary and I did. That's where I lost this fingernail. Never did tell Mother, but I stuck it in the wheel that was going around. I stuck my finger in there, and there went my fingernail. I didn't dare tell Mother. She never knew about it.
They call that the
Now
good
it,
old days.
now it would have
Yeah.
killed me.
No, those are not the good old days.
Them was the good old days.
We took a bath on Saturday night,
Whether you needed it or
whether
not.
we needed it or not, and I don't know whether we just all stunk so bad that we didn't couldn't speak
Now,
anybody else.
talking about that feed, we cut it with the 1-row binder, tractor, and a 1-row binder.
You had horses before you got
Then-
a tractor.
Then then we shocked it. Then we stacked it. Then we'd grind it. Dad didn't believe in feeding bundle feed. We ground all the feed, put it in the loft, shoved it down. That's how come my eyes are like they are. I was blind. I was just, even then, and but every Saturday we'd be grinding feed.
And someone had to be in that trailer to make sure that it was all scattered correctly. Because it was
Not
in,
when we blowed it in the loft.
oh,
But
well,
when
this
we,
was,
yeah, but we filled them trailers up, yeah.
I guess that was before your, I don't know. We did it in the garage. You always had that thing in the garage.
That was when we ground maize.
Y'all are so
For
much
the
older
hogs.
than I am. I don't remember
And
that.
I was working in there. I was scooting this thing
Right.
out, and all of a sudden I passed out up there, like the scared mother and daddy to death. And they had bought me a doll for Christmas. It was getting close to Christmas, and they didn't even wait till Christmas. They were so scared they gave it to me then.
Well, I've always said that, see, all this milk that we had, we used it for our household, and the rest of it went to the hogs, into this maize to mix up with and made a slop out of it. And it smelled like alcohol by morning. I said, those hogs, they love it because they get drunk all the time.
We had happy hogs. And
when we wanted cold milk, the windmill always pumped cold water. And we had kind of a, I don't know what you call it, that little, that had water there. I don't know what we call it, but anyway, it was a little dip there that held the water. And so Daddy would turn on the windmill, hit the water hose, would put the milk in a bucket or something and set it over there and keep it real nice and cool. So for supper, we had iced milk.
as
It
cold
wasn't
as
icy,
it got.
just cool.
It got cold.
And our mother thought that warm milk, that once you got it cold, it lost its nutrients. So we drank a lot of warm milk.
Oh, yeah.
Now, talking about food, we didn't buy no food. We had our eggs, we had our meat, we had our garden. We didn't buy salt and sugar and salt and peppers. About all we
Coffee.
bought, and coffee. The
Ah,
rest of it was raised.
yeah, let's tell them about Granddaddy.
Okay?
Oh,
He raised tobacco.
Yeah,
Everybody said you couldn't do it. Well, he raised tobacco.
and he
In
raised
Texas.
in
Yes,
Texas.
ma'am.
Right
West
there in
Dry,
Texas.
West Texas.
Yes.
And he raised strawberries too.
But that's-
Cantaloupes, watermelons.
But
And he'd
this-
take
His
the
tobacco, he'd have a patch of tobacco there, and it'd be enough to supply everybody there that bought tobacco leaves. And he'd dry them in the barn and on the
Oh,
front
in the-
porch, and
in the
on the front
kitchen.
porch, he'd have wires drying them leaves. And you go out there and pick the certain leaves and go hang them up.
and did he make cigars out of them or
No, he'd just wrap them up and people would buy.
Okay.
he used to put them behind that wood stove in the kitchen too to dry 'em. He'd have 3 or 4 lines back there.
Did he smoke?
No.
No, he never smoked.
And in his garden, he always had things that no one else could raise, and he would
Peanuts.
bring the dirt into the house and boil it,
Bake it, bake it.
bake it.
The ground was tight. It wasn't sandy. But, he raised peanuts in sandy land. But he raised it on tight land. He had peanuts. He had everything imaginable that you could eat there.
He was a,
Nobody else would raise around there.
and he was a musician too. He played the violin and
Accordion.
accordion.
Really?
And my cousin Lorraine Letitia Gray's family has the violin and the accordion that he played.
And uncle, he played usually the violin. He played the accordion. And they would make some real good music. Didn't know how to read a note of music, but they played. You could tell them to play something, and they could play it.
Uncle Joe was a blacksmith too.
The only memory I have of Uncle Joe is during World War II. Again, I was probably 5, 6, 7, and he was called up with the draft, and he went to have his physical. And the doctor then told him if he didn't quit drinking, he'd be dead within 6 months. Well, he came home, and I don't think he ever sobered up, and he died. And we had to take him to Stanford, and he was in the back seat of the car with me. And I won't ever forget that because that's the closest I've ever been to a dead person.
He was like, he wasn't in a casket, and he was just,
No, they just put him in a car to take him to the funeral home.
oh my.
You threw him in the back seat.
Yeah.
I tell you a cute one about Uncle Joe. He was a drunkard. On every weekend he would drink. All week he'd work like a Trojan mule, but come weekend he'd get dead drunk. And he had a friend named Emil Slovacek, and they would get together and they would go. And one Saturday night, or I guess it was toward morning or something, the sheriff came over there to Daddy's and said, "I think maybe tomorrow sometime you better come get Joe and Emil out of the jail." He says, "What did they do?" He said, "They've been driving the car up and down the steps of the courthouse."
Oh, man.
Joe could fix a road binder. They'd get him a half a pint of whiskey. He couldn't fix it unless he got a half a pint of whiskey. But he could get that half a pint of whiskey and he could fix that road binder. It'd work like a clock.
And the reason we brought Uncle Joe in with grandmother and granddaddy is because they all lived together.
Uncle Joe never married.
He never
And he
married.
lived with grandmother and
All right, let's get
Our
that.
mother came with her parents across from Czechoslovakia, and she came with her mother and three brothers: Uncle Rudolph, Uncle Joe, I guess.
Frank.
Grandpa.
Well, now Grandpa came with Uncle Frank. They came over 6 months early.
Oh.
And our grandmother was so helpless. Oh, and another story about her.
This is the grandma that made the broom walk.
Yes, this is the grandmother. Yes,
That's the
and
only grandmother we knew.
she ruled the family with an iron hand, and but she got pregnant after my mother married. She was probably in her mid-40s, and she was so mad at Granddaddy for getting her pregnant that he was banned from the house. There was a little room built out of a porch.
Remember what we called it?
What did we call it?
Kumbalik.
Kumbalik. Anyway.
Mhm.
And that's where he stayed. Now he could stay in there. He could go in the kitchen because he did all the cooking. She never cooked. But that's the only 2 rooms he could go into. She banned him from her bedroom for the rest of their married life.
Okay, now let's get to that bread he made. He made always 9 loaves of bread. They were round loaves. Made them in an oven with wood stove. And when we'd come over there, he'd have that bread ready a lot of times. And we'd eat 2 or 3 of them loaves as kids. Milk, butter, and that bread. And it was delicious.
And probably
He always made great potato pancakes too.
Yeah, great.
With plenty of garlic
And
and
nutzik. That potato dish would be, I think it'd be called quiche now. It was a potato dish with a little crust on it. And I used to think that was the most heavenly thing. I probably wouldn't even touch it now.
Now, what were they like? I guess my great grandparent. What were they in Czech? Were they okay? Who came over from
They
Czechoslovakia?
were our mother's
Okay, this is your
parents.
grandmother.
Well, right. Okay.
My mother's
And-
parents.
Great grand.
Great
So-
grandmother.
Were my great grandma and grandpa born here or in Czechoslovakia?
Czechoslovakia.
No, the great grandparents were born, but your great grandparents were born here.
Both of them.
No.
No.
We are the first generation
Yeah,
born here.
we're the first generation.
Okay.
Okay, now they came from Czechoslovakia. We cannot find any record of mother's family. That we know exactly the town they were in and how many degrees, latitude and longitude, but we can't find any other information on it.
What town was it?
Hruby Horky. But we can't. And
The town apparently doesn't exist anymore.
now our father came over differently, and they met here, and they married here.
In Texas.
Yes. Our father came over into Galveston. We have that record and the ship that he came over. And then he came indentured to his paternal aunt, his own father's sister, in near Victoria, Texas, a little town named St. Mary's. He and his older sister, Tony, indentured means she paid their way. Then they were to work a year to work that off. And she literally made slaves out of them. They had to escape. Their own paternal aunt, and Dad said some days they would be doing good to get a boiled potato to eat.
My gosh.
He was 17 years old when he came up here.
So she came over sometime before. She had been here for a while, or
Yes, she had been here a while, and they had become farmers, and they ran a newspaper.
now were we farmers in Czechoslovakia, or
We think so.
No, well,
No,
no.
our father was not, and I don't know about the mother's family.
Mother's family had a store, and kind of like a dime store we used to have. And on weekends or other times, she'd take stuff out of the store and go up and down the countryside.
That was Daddy's family.
Was that Daddy's family?
Mother's family lived, I guess, in a rural area because they lived in a house with the animals underneath them, which was
Well, they still have it over there.
still have it that way. But their house burned, so instead of starting over, and they came here, and we don't have any idea. There were land speculators that went over to that country then, and they would sell land. But how in the world did they find their way to Tuxedo, Texas? That has been a mystery, and we cannot find any record of their coming into Galveston Harbor or New York Harbor. So we don't know. And you found some papers one time said they came into Baltimore, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't investigated that yet.
Now-
maybe-
See, now, Dad's mother and Dad, we don't know much of nothing about them. And he never did say much about them.
Well, one of the parents had a dime store, kind of like a dime store.
Yeah, now that was his
Yeah.
mother.
And
That was
she
Daddy's
used to go
mother.
up and down the.
And
They call 'em a peddler.
She passed away in Czechoslovakia.
We never saw her.
And but Dad paid his Bessie's,
Bessie's way over.
Yeah.
and who paid
My
Tony?
little sister.
Tony.
was indentured to this Aunt Kapka,
Yeah.
Teta Kapka, in St. Mary's, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And I have her obituary. And then my father did eventually have his sister Tony and a brother and a sister Bessie and a brother John. And John died with leaving no children in South Bend, Indiana. And
But I correspond with Bessie and Daddy's cousin.
in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, and I've got a picture of them here.
Okay, now yes. So there were many relatives still there that we don't know, and Rose knows one of them. But now his sister Bessie married and had children, and they are still living around Ashland, Nebraska.
You remember when you were little and we went to Omaha,
Sure.
Nebraska? All right, that was Betty. That was
Bessie's
Bessie's daughter,
Daughter.
and Bessie was Daddy's sister.
sister.
So she was his niece.
So those are your distant cousins,
That's the ones we visited this
and they're
summer.
the Aunt Bessie and Uncle Charlie's daughter is Betty Harpster. Her husband's passed away, and she lives with a daughter in Ashland, Nebraska, which is between Omaha and Lincoln. They lived in Omaha when you were there with us visiting,
Mm-hmm.
and they since then, all three of her children have moved out to Ashland, so she lives with a daughter out there too. So you
I don't
do.
know if you were old enough to
Oh, I remember. I was 9.
Yeah, he was old. He's pretty big in those pictures.
Now let's go back to Dad's side. And when they first married. And they started out in, what time was that over there?
Dante, South Dakota.
Well, they started out in Tuxedo, Texas.
Oh, they just got
They
married.
got
then.
married there,
Yeah.
and then they got on a train and went to
Dante,
Dante, South Dakota, which is near Yankton, near Wagner, and they homesteaded on the river, on the Missouri River bottom. There was land there. If you lived and improved it, built buildings on it, and farmed it for so many years, it was yours.
I'll tell you how cold it got there. They waited till winter and put a wagon, load of hogs, and 4 horses, which is 2 teams, and put nails in the horses' hooves and went down the river with all that load and all them horses to take the hogs to market. The hills were so high that the horses couldn't pull them wagons up them hills. So they had to wait till the river froze over. And they say that it got so cold that a nail would pop on the top of the house and sound like a gun go off. And that was the reason they moved to Texas, because it was so cold out there.
Well, then too, they had a tornado there,
Yeah, they had.
and they had drought, and they just lost everything they had, and they'd already buried 3 children there.
Mhm.
And they finally had my sister Mary there, and she lived. The oldest child died at 18 months, and mother thinks it was something like polio. Of course, they didn't know about polio then. And then the 2 little baby girls were stillborn. But my goodness, the first time she went to a doctor is when Dad took off after a doctor when she was already in labor.
And when before they moved, they sold out, and Dad went to Sioux City, Iowa, to the stockyards and told them to send them, I don't know how many boxcars, but it's quite a few. He said, we need I don't know how many, to load up all the cattle and take them to Sioux City, because he said there wasn't no market there. So they had to ship them on train to Sioux City, Iowa. And I've heard him say that.
And then they came back to Texas and they bought a farm just
Dickey,
north of Tuxedo. And that's where they lived until they died.
And Daddy paid for that farm with gold coins. Every bit of it was paid for with gold coins.
Where'd he get the gold from?
Well, they had it then.
That's what they got
I've
from
got-
selling their
Coins, well,
cattle, and
Oh,
that was a currency then.
Rose had that coin. I've got it now.
Which
Yes.
how was and tell them how that what that coin was.
It's a $10.
But that was the only one they had left.
Yeah,
That's
this
what-
was
that's
the
what-
when they bought this land. This was the only
Money.
$10 coin that they had, and they weren't going to spend it, and they're going to save it, and so it's still with us.
And since Jerry has the only Newman sons, he has two. It will be he has the coin to be passed on
Yeah.
to Newman.
$10 gold piece.
Yes,
I got it there in the safe.
And don't you know it's valuable now?
No, they do.
it's worth more than $10 now.
Quite a
You
bit.
know, I went to. Oh, no, I guess I better not say this right now while he's getting all this.
Well,
And,
if you hang on to that, you'll never be broke.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't. I asked a pawn man once, and he says $35.
Oh, he's not
Oh, you
going
don't
to.
want to sell it to a pond man.
No,
Yeah.
you're going to have to go to a
That's
person
all
that
he
And
did.
appraises it.
I should have asked him how much he wants for his first, you know,
Uh-huh.
before I told him that.
What date's on in the date? The year that
1988.
1888. The year that
1888.
our dad was born.
Yeah, it was the year Dad was born. We got a silver dollar there too, 1888. I don't know where it came from, but we got it.
And our sister Mary, who's the only one left that's not here today, has a gold cross that belonged to our mother's family. And it has, I don't know whether they're real jewels in it or not, but they look like emeralds or rubies. And many of the women in our family have worn that one when they got married.
Yeah, your mother, Linda wore it, and Barbara wore it,
And I wore it.
and you wore it.
You ran off and got married, so you didn't wear it.
I didn't even know it existed then.
Yeah, here
Yes, I
we
did,
are
because
today.
grandmother had told me that it was going to be mine.
And
so-
here we are today. Jerry
Yeah.
has 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. And Rose has, well, you are familiar with Rose's family because one of them's your mother. And I have 2 daughters and a son. So we were very, but you know, in Daddy's family, Aunt Bessie just had 1 child. Aunt Tony had 1, and he's dead now. They must have really thought Mother and Daddy were prolific because they had 9 children. 5 of us made it to adulthood. But I imagine they thought, well, they're having kids all the time.
Did it work?
now, now, Aunt Lily, you told me a couple years back when we talked about this that you have a theory that your grandma may have been a gypsy.
We
Oh, well,
feel
that has been common knowledge.
we feel
Oh, okay.
that this may been is the reason we can't find any information on them because back then gypsies were thought of as well, kind of like the blacks were here
Lowdowns.
in the 40s, 30s, 20s. And for our grandfather to have married one of those would have just been out. He would have been an outcast, and that may have contributed to the reason why they came over here, because our grandmother was a little woman, black-haired, olive-complected, black-eyed,
Eyes like fire.
and she ruled everything she got her hands on. And she was so money greedy. And the year that she died was the year they found the 3 oil wells on her farm. And we thought that was ironic.
Yeah.
Now, Lily has a little bit of that gypsy stuff in her that she can prognosticate or.
I get flashes of things that will happen, but I try to throw it under because I don't want it. But I do get glimpses of things that might happen sometimes, and they're never good ones.
I know she and I have talked on the telephone, and she'll say, "Oh, you'd say you dreamed about it."
Yeah, it's like a dream. And I just don't want that because I think that's of the devil. And I really think the devil has a lot to do with that. But our father came to this country because everything was ruled by the Catholic Church when he was there. Where you lived, where you worked was all ruled by the Catholic, bishop, cardinal, whatever.
Was he Catholic?
No, he did not believe in the Catholic way. So he came to this country to escape from being Catholic.
Well,
And
there
as
was,
a result,
another reason
okay, tell me.
to misdrafting.
That's right.
To do
Because he
what?
was 17 years old,
Yes,
and
being
they would,
drafted.
Oh,
if he
yeah.
would have stayed there, they would have drafted him.
And when did he come?
What year was that, do you know?
He came over in 1910.
So it was.
No, 1906. I'm sorry,
Well, that
1906.
was before the First World War.
Yes, mother came over in 1910.
What war would he even, or did they have a?
This was in Europe. I don't know what war
They were
that
at
was.
war all the time there,
Yeah.
so and our grandfather, Matisha, was in the service, and you could tell he was a military man every time you talked to him because he held himself erect, and he had a little handlebar mustache, and there wasn't a hair out of place in it.
Well, Uncle
All right.
Frank served in the World War One here.
All right. Grandpa was, wasn't he a foreman, some kind on that MKT railroad that's building through there?
In Tuxedo, where
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
He
worked
didn't,
on.
he didn't know much how to speak English much, but they made him a foreman there for that railroad that came through Tuxedo, MKT.
Which no longer exists.
Yeah.
He and his oldest son came over, and then 6 months later, our grandmother and the 3 youngest children came over.
And y'all were the first generation to speak English, right?
Mhm.
Right. And I spoke very little English when I started school. So what little bit they had taught me.
I failed his first grade.
Our sister Mary,
I
when
didn't
she
learn
started
till
school,
fourth
she couldn't
year.
speak a word of English.
It's cool.
Our sister Mary really can't speak English too well to this day.
You got a point there. But finally, when I started, she had taught me enough that we had the same teacher too, Mrs. Merle E. And so she was very considerate. And when I started, she knew what trouble Mary had. And I'm going to tell you all one more thing about the school and a language. My mother and daddy decided that one year they were going to buy just it was a sink in a way, with a little
A kitchen sink, yeah.
kitchen sink, and
Oh, that was a teacher that asked me.
well,
And I came to school, and the station was out there at the highway, and the school was about a half a mile north, and we lived another half a mile north of there. And of course, they didn't deliver the sink and the what was that? Sink
there
and
was something else.
There
in
was a
there, too.
stand that went under the sink. Remember that?
stove.
Okay.
Stove. Well, I knew how to say stove in English, but I didn't know how to say sink. So I told her.
We called it
Then
zinc.
she asked me, "Well, how is it in Czech?" I said, "Sink." Oh yeah, I know what that is.
We called it
It's-
zinc.
And
We didn't say
so-
S-I-N-K. We said Z-I-N-K. But
We
that
thought
was the Czech.
we thought that was Czech. So
We spoke a lot of broken
yeah,
Czech
it was broken Czech.
because we took called brown shoes, brownovi shoes,
And they're brown.
which brownovi there's no such word in, but they Americanized it. They Czechicized, I guess.
Just like peaches.
Mary-
Peaches is peachesy, which is peaches is bruskle.
Yeah, right, but we called them pichesi.
Yeah.
I was writing somebody something one day, and I came to the word gate, and I could not remember how to say gate in English. I mean in Czech. So I called her.
And we call it gatik, which
we
is
always called
taken
it
from the
gating,
English.
which is also not a no word at all.
So actually, we didn't speak a pure Czech. And our parents, our mother especially, never adjusted to America. She lived in a never land because she lived in the Czechoslovakia that was when she left it. And of course, it had progressed too. So she lived in a land that didn't exist anymore in a time.
Now, do we know what, if anything, happened with our relatives when Hitler took over the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia?
Well, they were under a lot. We didn't have any Jewish in our family, so they weren't persecuted as such, but they had hard times, as all did during the war. But I can't think of anything. After World War II was when you found our aunt there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aunt Maria, which had been our father's sister.
Until after Daddy died.
Okay.
I don't know how I found her, but we got to corresponding, and then
We found her address amongst Daddy's
I guess
things.
that's what it was. It was-
You know, I don't know, he brought up something, that Hitler didn't really conquer Czechoslovakia, did he?
He took it.
Yeah, they
They
took
took
it.
it.
Annexed it.
Annexed it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't no battle of any kind, was there?
No.
No, there was no battle.
But, you know, there was kind of a big deal about Poland, but I don't remember anything about
And
Czechoslovakia.
they took it over, and everything was very, very hard to get there. Rose and I visited there the year that you were born,
81.
81, and it was under communist rule then, and it still was a very, very poor country. They were really eager to get the American tourist dollar, but things were just so poor there and run down.
Now, is our ancestors mainly from what is now Czech or what is now Slovakia or both?
From what is now the Czech Republic.
Czech Republic, okay.
They were in the area around Prague, east of Prague, about 30, 40 miles, and a little bit north. And at the time, Mother and Dad were telling us that they were far apart when they lived in Czechoslovakia. Come to find out, they were only about 15 miles apart. But when they were there, you know, you had to either walk or animal transport.
Mm.
So that was a long distance.
Mm.
And then when Lily and I went to Prague and we wanted to go to this little town, we didn't know that we had to get a visa from here to go to visit the little town where they were born. Permit, yeah.
They'd have an invitation from the government, actually.
So we didn't get to go because they were still under German rule.
But she had been corresponding to our aunt there, and this man that was provided for us by the government to be our guide told her that town did not exist, even though we had it on a letterhead.
Yeah.
But this was the communist way. There was something there that they didn't want the Americans to see. We were told later that there's probably a military installation or factory.
So we were under Soviet rule
Yes.
in Czechoslovakia
But
was?
even in
Yes.
Prague, when we wanted to go somewhere, they wouldn't let us go where we wanted to. They told us where we could go, and they would go with us.
Mm.
This is kind of lucky that y'all were safe.
Oh,
That y'all-
We were very safe. They
Okay.
weren't going to let anything
And they told-
happen.
They told us in the hotel to watch what we say, though, because that all the rooms were bugged.
Wow. Okay, now maybe this is maybe I'm thinking about my other side of the family or just made this story up, but I could have sworn that one of you were telling me one time about maybe it was an aunt or a cousin or someone who she knew the day she was gonna die, and she said, "I'm gonna die on Mother's Day" or something like that. Grandma.
That was in the Mother's Your Daddy's family. That has been told, yes. She predicted her own death.
Now who was that?
I don't know which side of the family it was from now. It's been so long ago.
Someone kept saying, "There's that's not this side of the family."
No, it was, but she can't remember who.
Oh,
it was.
okay.
I remember hearing one of the parents talking
Said-
about it.
I'm gonna die on February 14th or something like that. I don't remember what it was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I remember that very well.
There were lots and lots of stories, and trying to get it all into context. We were all raised in this farm that they bought north of Tuxedo, which is between Stanford and Hamlin, Texas.
mhm.
And the little community, it has a little sign on the highway now. That's all that's left of it, just about. And we all started to school there, and then ended up in Stanford schools. And
We
then
went through the 10th grade in Tuxedo, and then you had to go to
I went through the 8th.
8th grade. Yeah, that's what.
Well, I had 3 years in Stanford.
Didn't we just go 10 years then?
No, I went 11, didn't we?
Well, you might have gone 11. I went 10.
This cowboy, just a few weeks before he was to graduate from high school, Mother and Dad were gone, and he and brother Jim, who's now deceased,
They're the
Decided to-
Ashburn boys.
decided to put our bull in the runway of the barn, in the barn. And he got on him, and the bull just walked around. So he told my brother to open the barn door. Well,
Oh, we had between a trailer and a wall there, pinned in, so we could tie the flanks and all that. So it bucked. Dad had some new terraces built over there, and I was doing real good riding him. And then I guess I rode him about 100 yards or so, and then he bucked me off, and right there in the terrace channel where it's dug out about that deep, and cracked bone in this and cracked bone that.
Mm.
Well, when Mother and Dad came in, I went to the doctor. They took me to the doctor. Well, the doctor fixed this, and I went to school. Next day, from school, I had to go back to that doctor. This arm was killing me. And he said, well, it's almost in worse shape than that one we fixed. So we fixed that one. And I didn't have to take typing class. My teacher just took the top grade that I made there and graduated.
Well, why did Jim quit school?
Dad had to have some help on the farm.
Oh,
And Jim was just not making it. And so
he wasn't bright. You know.
Yeah, he like 1 year finishing up, and Dad needed help.
I came after Mary, Rose, Jim, Jerry. So
She's the baby.
in high school, I was never Lily. They called me some other name, and I had to live some reputations down too.
Oh,
Why did they call you what you know?
I was always Rose or Mary or Jim's little sister or Jerry's little sister.
But I'll tell you about her
They didn't
name.
even know your name.
No,
We would go shopping. Mother would take us shopping for clothes, and I always called her George. That's all I ever called her.
Lulu George.
Lulu
To
George.
top it all off.
And she'd get so mad.
Now, where'd that come from?
Why did you call
My
me?
middle name is Georgie. Mother
Oh.
and Dad wanted a boy. So I was named Lily Georgie. And she called me Lulu or Lulu George. And I hated it. But one thing about it, during World War II, she joined the Coast Guard Spars. And she sent me boxes of Hershey bars and different candy bars and bubble gum, which we could not get during World War II.
And she didn't care what I called her.
Yeah.
And I would take them to school and sell them for $0.25 a piece, which was a lot of money.
Oh,
An
Till
enterprising young
Mother
businesswoman.
and Dad caught me and I had quit.
Yeah.
Somebody told. But I was making some money there.
Well, when I was going to university, Mother made poppy seed kolaches. Oh, and she could make them heavenly. I tell you, they were so. She could make them that good too.
Used to.
And used to. Okay. But anyway, every weekend, I could just bet on it. My mother would send a big box of poppy seed kolaches and some apple strudel or something else to go with it. And I was living in a boarding house with I think it was 6 or 7 other girls, and she'd always send enough that we would all have the best feast.
Miss Ponton. How
Miss-
do I remember that name?
That was her.
Because I was a child.
She was the
little
little
bitty-
house mother.
There was 14 years, 12 years difference in you and me.
I don't know.
About 14 years, I think. Well, anyway, I was in grade school and we would get up early in the morning and I would just wake up in the back seat of the car. We were going to Austin, Texas to see her. And Mother would have packed fried chicken and poppy seed kolaches and strudel and all that stuff. And there I was supposed to sit in the back seat with all that stuff, but I couldn't touch it.
Good gosh. They put you in the back seat with a dead person. They put you in the back seat with food.
I was mistreated. I really
You
was.
did-
That explains a lot of things today.
Now, Grandma, were you the first in the family to go to college?
Yes.
Did I what?
Were you were the first in the family to go to college?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so I guess that means that Mom was the first one to graduate from
No,
college?
I graduated.
Oh, you graduated. Oh, that's right.
She graduated from Hardin Simmons in Abilene. Was it
Yeah.
Hardin Simmons?
Yes, I went my first year to Texas Christian.
Yeah, she was up here.
That's the only two that went to college. The rest of it just went to high
The rest
school.
of them were doing good to get out of high school.
I went to college. I didn't quite graduate, but I went.
Now, what you said that the great grandpa left Czechoslovakia because he wasn't Catholic under the Catholic rule. Was he Lutheran or what?
He was nothing.
He was not.
He wasn't an atheist, agnostic, yes.
Yeah, because I started when we started going to church as kids. My mother and Daddy made us go to church because the Baptist church was right across the field. When it was dry, we cut across the field. It took us
The
5
mother
minutes.
believed in, but she didn't go.
Yeah,
Mother believed
but
in being a
and
Catholic.
I asked Daddy one time. I said, "Why don't you go to church?" He said, "I talk to God out in the fields when I'm plowing." So,
But we were brought up without a church. I didn't accept the
I-
Lord until
I
we
went
had
to the-
a big upright radio. And on Sunday mornings, we didn't do much in the farm. We just fixed a big meal. So I'd go in there and I would listen to preachers. And that was my first.
I went to that First
Exposure.
Baptist church just on Sundays. Not all the time, but quite a bit.
yeah, Mother was pretty
And
adamant.
I drove the pickup. I know that old Model A pickup to to the church. And,
Well, I want to tell you a story about that Model A pickup. We, the kids at school, every once in a while would get in a car or somewhere. When we went somewhere, there was a place called California Creek. And we just loved to go over there and go up and down that creek. And the boys would always bring their poles or something. And one time I asked Daddy, I said, can I take the pickup and take the kids up? He said, sure, go ahead. So here I go with pickup full of kids. I mean, we were crowded. And when they all got out, I was going to park the pickup. And I didn't know the ditch was as deep as it was. And I started parking, and that pickup just started going over and over. It just landed in that deep ditch. Took every one of those boys to get that out of there. Daddy never knew that happened.
The first time I drove a pickup, I was sitting on one end of the field, and my dad was on the other end of the field, and he waved his hat for me to bring that pickup over there. I knew somehow I had to get that pickup from point A to point B.
It was an old Model A.
No, this one was a 39 International.
Oh, okay, well,
I'm younger
than you are.
Remember? And
that was a newer pickup.
I got it. I think I went in second gear across every row, plowed row, but I got it to him. I knew, because when our father said something, you did it. You didn't, there was no question.
Well, that International made a lot of trips to Fort Worth with cattle.
And they were, Mother and Dad were bringing a load of cattle, pulling a trailer full of cattle to bring to the Fort Worth, just to the market.
Stockyard.
The stockyards.
And Mother loved to be around people, and she loved looking at things. And of course, that was when the highway went right downtown Fort Worth. And she got so enthralled, and Dad would tell her, now you tell me where to turn off. And she got so enthralled looking in the store window, she forgot till the last minute, and Dad turned too sharp and broke the hitch.
Right there in Fort Worth, where about 4 or 5 streets come together, and he was right there, broke down.
And he was very angry.
Police was helping him and everything over there.
did.
They just chained it up over there and took him to the stop. Now, about that Model A pickup, we'd always work in the fields, and we'd come in for lunch at home, and so I would eat right quick and get in that pickup and sit at the steering wheel. Whoever sat at the steering wheel got to drive that pickup back to the field, which wasn't very far, but you got to drive. So I'd eat my meal and go sit in that pickup. And then when everybody got in, I would go to the field.
Speaking of driving, I nearly killed him. We had a storm cellar, and we had this old Model A car. It was all open window. You know, if you wanted to stay out of the rain, you had to put those some kind of little plastic things on your
Canvas stuff.
Anyway, the point is,
What is it?
Whatever.
the car was parked in front of the garage, and I was forbidden to get into it. But I wanted to learn to drive so bad that I would drive it up on that storm cellar, and it'd roll back down. Up on the cellar, roll back. Well, he got in front of it, and I ran over him. And I'm telling you, it ran right across here. And boy, I screamed. I knew we needed help. I needed help.
Mother ran over
Mother
him.
ran over him too. It's
With
wonderful.
the Model T Ford. That's the only car she ever drove, I think, was that Model T.
And she swore to goodness that after she ran over you, that she'd never
She
drive
was
again. She
backing
didn't.
out, and she ran. Well, the Model T wasn't heavy, so it didn't hurt me, but it ran over me.
That was the hardest whipping that my mother ever gave me. I mean to tell you, I couldn't sit down. I thought for a week.
Were you like?
He was
Did
a
you
baby.
go to the hospital or?
No.
I don't
They
remember.
were-
We went to the
I don't even know.
We
what
went
she
to the
knows.
doctor in Hamlin.
I don't even
It was
know.
old Dr. Fisher. And we had to go up a whole lot of stairs to get to his office. I mean, if you were sick, you wouldn't know how
You had to
got
work for it to get well.
Yeah. And he looked at him and he says, well, said it's a very, I don't remember what he said, but he said, oh, just take him home and make him walk. He's all right.
Walk it off.
Walk it off. You had to walk down
Well, I
the
had to
stairs.
be big enough to walk. I don't remember it.
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, you could walk because you walked over there and got under the car.
Well,
Got
I
in the
think
way of
you
the
were
car.
How old was he, roughly?
He was about 2.5 or 3 years old.
My gosh!
And I
You
think
ran over a 2-year-old.
He was just a toddler when he came out of Mother, because he was in the back of the car when Mother drove, and she said he fell out, and that's how she ran over him. But she never drove again after that.
But being little, and he would just, flop. He wouldn't tense up or anything. If he had a tensed up, he'd probably had some broken bones.
Yeah.
But anyway.
He didn't think his sister was out to kill him.
Oh, I didn't drive it up to that cellar anymore either.
Well, guys, I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Sort of running out of tape, and probably getting hungry, tired talking.
Start talking.
Oh, we could talk forever.
Well,